no good. Rebounded by Anthony. 2 seconds left. Anthony for the win. Cody throws it. Cole Anthony gives the Magic a victory.
Close up Magic.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Close Up Magic. I'm your host, Stephen Cameron, and today we have a really fun episode. We are recording this December 16th, but you are not going to hear it until you're listening now, which is the week of Christmas. Little pre-recording because I want to take a week off, and I have a great guest talking about a great subject that will fit just perfectly. This information is going to be a little bit timeless. Hopefully the Magic are continuing their winning streak today. They're playing the Boston Celtics, hoping getting that fifth win in the row. Again, you're hearing this probably a week and a half from today, so we'll see where the Magic actually stand at that point. I'm not going to ramble too much about the Magic specifically right now because it's not relevant to when you're hearing this. So I'm just going to do the quick housekeeping notes. If you want to support the show, you can do it in two ways: by purchasing merchandise, or you can check out our Patreon program. A couple different tiers for you to financially support and back the show. It really helps us do a lot of cool things like giveaways, just upgrades to systems and softwares and stuff like that. So if you want to support us financially, those are the ways to do it. The other way you can support us is by liking and subscribing to this channel, wherever you're listening to it, on a podcast platform or YouTube. Hit that thumbs up, give a comment, hit that subscribe button. Really helps out a lot. Shout out to 19 Media Group, who is the network that supports this show. They do a lot of really cool things for us. So without further ado, what we're going to do this week is we're going to talk about the NBA draft. I'm going to bring up my friend Richard, MavsDraft, who is a good, awesome Magic fan and Mavs fan. His stream on, or his name on Twitter is Mavs Magic Draft. So Richard, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Hey, it's good to be back. I think the last time I was here, we were talking about what we should do at number one. And,
yes.
I'm glad they didn't listen to me. So I'm excited.
Who did you have again? Were you?
I said they should have taken Chet. So.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, he still could be a really good player.
He's
I'm looking forward to
Paolo.
seeing. No, he's not going to be better than Paolo. Of course not. I mean, Paolo's the best. I'm just lucky because I'm like, you know me, like I'm like somewhat in tune with the draft when it gets later and closer to the off season. But I would not call myself a draft expert by any means. No one's going to come to me and be like, give me the draft breakdown of this prospect. I'm gonna be like, go to Richard or someone else on Twitter because they're much more knowledgeable. But when you invited me to be a participant on one of your later mock drafts for the season, I picked Paolo, and I thought that was going against the grain a little bit when people were still like had Chet or Jabari higher. That made me feel good. It's probably the one and only time I'll ever be right in a mock draft, so I was psyched.
Hey, you knew what you were doing, man. You know ball.
I know ball. Maybe I should be a draft scout. Man, Richard, I think this is the third year we've had you on too. I was thinking about that before I recorded. This is the third season or third draft class we've talked about together, I believe. Because I think you came on the season before last as well. This is going to be a fun conversation. The Magic have 2 draft picks this year. Potentially 2 draft picks. We have our own first, and then we have the Chicago Bulls, which is top 4 protected. The Magic right now, as we record this December 16th, I think they have the 3rd worst record in the league, but they're kind of on the upward scale with their 4-win win streak. They could climb a couple more spots. Some people think they could be potentially in the play-in range. Some people think just outside. I'm more on the outside looking in for this Magic team, but who knows what could happen. So I'm sort of like, we could potentially have 2 lottery picks, anywhere from like 4 to 12, 13, 14, depending on what happens with that Bulls pick. And from what I do know, this draft class is pretty stacked and pretty deep. Before we get too into the specifics, and talk about individual players, I want to just learn and hear more about your larger thoughts in general about this draft class, for that lotto range.
Yeah, it's been an interesting class. I think the top two have held up. Scoot has been hurt, but Victor Wembanyama has been incredible over in Europe. I mean, we saw what they did in that preseason matchup, and both of them lived up to the hype. Like, there's been no real downward trend in play. I mean, like I said, Scoot's been hurt, so it's been hard to say, but I mean, Victor has been putting up unprecedented numbers in Europe. Granted, the system he's in is designed to do that. His agent has very much said we are going to make him look like the number one pick, like without saying it. But so that stuff is held up. But after that, it's been a little bit disappointing, honestly. I think this was one of the most hyped recruiting classes I've ever seen, maybe outside of like 2018 recruiting class when Zion, Cam Reddish, RJ Barrett, all of those guys were in it, and it was just a loaded class. But this had a lot of hype, and so far, due to a variety of reasons, it's been a slow start. Some guys have been injured, some guys just haven't played well. It's been a weird bunch, but it's still a good class.
What is a prospect, and granted, we're not going to, not even related to the Magic or anything like that, but what's one of the prospects that you feel was hyped going into the season and has been a bigger disappointment, midway through where we're kind of at right now?
Yeah, I think there's only two candidates that can qualify, and actually they're on the same team, and that's Derek Lively of Duke and Dariq Whitehead. Dariq Whitehead's a little bit more trending upwards, but Derek Lively was the number one recruit for most sites. I had him as my number one center, number one non-pro, if you will, non-Wembanyama, non-Scoot, because he was a monster interior on both ends, and he could stretch the floor. I thought that was just the perfect modern center, and he just hasn't been aggressive. He doesn't find the ball. He's been very passive, and it's been a little bit disappointing. The stats have been reflecting it.
Without getting past the disappointment or the slow start, because we're still somewhat early into things, right? March Madness is still 3 months away. I mean, there's enough games and track now to kind of know where things are. Like the class is shaping up a little bit, but I still think there's probably enough time for certain players to turn things around and make different impressions at the end of the season versus where they are today. But just in general, getting back to the macro level of the lottery area, what is this class looking like? Is it filled with a lot of wings? Is it guard heavy, big heavy? I know we're looking at like, outside of Victor and Scoot, who like everyone kind of knows, like 7 foot athletic unicorn, and then this crazy large like guard wing type player with Scoot. But like, what about the rest of the class? How are they, like, what is this class kind of filled of? Is it a good blend? Is it lean heavy in one direction or the other positionally wise?
Yeah, I think it's kind of balanced, but if there had to be like one, I would say guards seems to be the top dogs. They have Case and Wallace, or actually, let me rephrase that. A lot of guys who can play shooting guard. Doesn't have to necessarily be point guards. It's a lot of guys that can play the 1 or the 3, but also the 2 as like a secondary position, the 1 or the 3. So you have like Dariq Whitehead, like I said before, he's a shooting guard. Case and Wallace plays both guard positions. Nick Smith plays both guard positions. Terquavion Smith probably ends up playing both. The Thompson twins, I think there's a real argument. While Amen is probably a point guard, there are real world scenarios where he's a shooting guard. Same with his twin Osar. Like, there's a lot, and that's just the lottery talent. You keep going down this list, there's just more and more guards. And a lot of them, though, they have some point guard skills, some of them, and some have more wing skills. So they're more traditional 2-3 like shooting guards. But then there's also like more 1-2 shooting guards, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. I feel like if we're looking at this from a Magic standpoint, like, we have our forwards for the most part. Yeah, I mean, Paolo and Franz, don't really need to say more about that there. Coming in with with 2 draft picks, looking at the Magic roster now, considering there's going to be some change of scenery for some of our players on the squad, Mo Bamba might not be on this team next year. Terrence Ross, likely not. He's a free agent this summer. Gary Harris has a team option, 2nd year, really good trade candidate at the moment. Obviously RJ Hampton is out of the rotation. We'll see what happens with like Chuma, and just some of these other guys, even Mo Wagner is got a team, he's a free agent this summer. So there could be a lot of new faces on this Magic roster, but I still feel like if we don't just go best player available, which is typically what I always go for when a team picking that poorly, but we kind of have two of our best players already nailed out with Franz and Paolo. If you wanted to be specific, what type of player archetype would you be looking for the Magic? Because personally, for me, at least one of those picks, I would like to try and find like a nice 2-3, like really elite shooter, defensive wing. But we have two picks, so we can kind of be picky and choosy where and how we want to be. How would you approach this draft if you were like a Magic scout right now?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, ideally you get the number 1 pick and you get Wembanyama, but and that's yes. Obviously a cheat code of an answer. If say they get like the 4th and 8th, or what is it, the 5th and 8th pick, like they did in 2021, for example, sure. Which is like a very realistic path. I would go probably what you said first. Like Cam Whitmore is just the prime definition of that. I think he's more than just 3-and-D, where he can put the ball on the floor, but you have a guy who at minimum is going to be a very good shooter and a very good defender with great size and ball skills. So I would go him. And then after that, I might just say go for the biggest talent. But if you had to fill a role, I think the team is mostly set on defensive bigs. Like that's not an area where I would want something like that. But I feel like they don't have enough size at guard where, hey, if there's a 6'6", 6'7" guard, which there are a couple that we don't know what the lottery will look like. It's still far too early. I think there's some candidates that really could sneak in there that are at least 6'6" and have point guard, like can be a point guard. That's probably what I would go for. It's just try and keep getting bigger. And
that's true too, because like the last group of players we had, even if our point guard was 6-foot DJ Augustin, he was standing next to 6'6" Evan Fournier, who wasn't the world's best defender by any means. We all know he had his limitations on that end, but there was some size there offensively for him to get his shot off shorter defenders, be a little bit more physical with his drives and stuff like that. And it just really helped his overall impact. And right now, you have Markelle Fultz, who's like 6'2", 6'3", same with Jalen Suggs in that 6'3", 6'4" range. Cole Anthony, probably 6 foot. Let's be realistic. He's not that tall, 6'2" at most. Gary Harris is 6'4". We really don't have anyone in that guard position. I would say RJ Hampton, but we know how the team is handling RJ Hampton. He's not going to be here much longer. He's definitely not going to be on the team next year, in my opinion. So you're right. They are kind of missing that size in that guard position. And that was one of the things that made, Jabari Smith Jr. A little bit more attractive last year in some cases, right? Like if Jabari Smith was in this year's draft class, I would go draft him in an instant to fit next to Fultz or who, Fultz or Suggs or whoever's going to be part of that starting group or even in the secondary group. It would just be nice to grab that type of size that you were talking about. Let's talk more about some of those prospects that could kind of fit in that like 1 through 3 type of wing player that we could focus on for the Magic. Who should we be keeping our eye on this draft class? And I mean, before I pass it fully off to you, like before we were talking, I was looking at the Thompson twins online, and even from before this, like I know they're young, they're athletic, they're both around 6'6". Their first steps are in a crazy fast, especially Amens. I think I'm saying his name right. Probably not. Excuse me if I'm not. And then you have Asar, who is like in my just really athletically gifted defensively. Are they fits for this team? Are you attracted to them? Are they people that would fit in that, kind of guard size range that you and I were just talking about? I'm iffier on Asar just because I don't see the thing with his shot is better right now. Don't get me wrong than Amens, and I also am with you. I've heard 3 different pronunciations. I don't know what to go with, but while Asar's shot is better, I don't think he has the primary guard skills to be that top end guard because his shot is still going to be inconsistent. Whether we want to, admit it or not, it's his first year of showing good flashes.
So that being said, I think if I had to choose just one of those, I would take Amen, because I think even without a jump shot, like you look at what Ja Morant's doing, add a few inches, like they're not that dissimilar. The only real knock for me is I wonder how much of it is fool's gold. I don't think a ton of it is, because he's about to turn 20 years old in a month and he's playing high school competition. Who knows? But the thing with him is just like you look at a pick and roll with him and he is elite at it. He already snakes through defenses. He knows exactly how to pass, how to score, how to reset out of pick and rolls. He's very advanced for his experience, really. And for me, I think if I was drafting as early as 3, I think I might take him there.
You think he's top 3 prospect?
Yeah, at this moment, I have him at 3. It's also partially because nobody else has emerged, but just the raw talent is up there. I mean, like, I think Scoot and Victor each have their own tiers, but like Amen might also have his own tier at 3.
That's fair. Defensively, how is he on that side of the ball?
You know, it's hard to say. I think he's got the raw skills to be good, but high school defense, I think, is very, very, like, even overtime elite. It's hard to judge. I would guess he nets around above average is what I would say. It says a very conservative guess, but couldn't really tell you one way or the other what the true outcome looks like.
Sure. I mean, overtime elite is a pretty new league. It sounds, I think this is first year. Correct me if I'm wrong there. Second year. Okay. How is that league compared to, like, I mean, I think from the tones that you're saying, you don't value it as much as you would like some of the college programs. How do you like compare overtime elite and really how are you like, what's the difference when you're scouting a player in a league like that versus something that's a little bit more true and proven in like the college sector?
Yeah, you look for some of the advanced flashes, how often they happen. And luckily for the Thompson twins, I think both of them really, you see a lot of advanced flashes. So that checks out. But you kind of have to realize like these guys are worlds better than even the third best player on the court with them. Like, because they're always going to be 1 and 2. There's a lot of talent that is growing in that league, but at the end of the day, it is still high school basketball, and there's still a lot of the same tendencies and patterns that can be deceiving, I would say, in scouting. I think high school scouting is one of the hardest things to do because everybody looks like a superstar. Every top 50, top 100 recruit really looks like the best player to ever touch a basketball since, like, you know, anybody like elite. And that's where it can be a little bit tricky, is how much of it is real, how much of this would happen in a more organized set, like one way or the other, whether it's great defensive play, is it a bad offensive play? Oftentimes, yes. And on offense, how much of it would have been stopped had a team been able to like more strongly game plan? Like you look at the NCAA and they do that. I think that's like a big difference.
That makes sense. Is there other prospects in overtime elite that we might see come out in the lottery range, or is it really just these two guys?
No, it's just those two. With OTE, for the most part, I think they have a couple second-round guys this year. I'm blanking on if they're eligible or not, but really next year is, I think, when we'll start seeing that. The next couple of years, there's a couple guys that are projected towards the lottery. We'll see. It's also very early. Anybody projected the lottery that's rated just means they're good. That's all it's saying. It's meaningless.
That makes sense. So, okay, let's talk a little bit more about this Magic first-round pick, right? You had talked about if it landed around 3, you're going, Thompson. Is there any other players in that, 3, 4, 5 range for you that you think would be a good fit, particularly for this Magic pick? And really, I guess, I think I'm jumping ahead of myself. If you are the Magic GM and we do have a pick, let's say 3, 4, 5 in that range, what is your strategy with that pick? Considering the buildup of this team, are you going best player available, or are you going something that's a little bit more fit and need for this team?
Always best player available for me. The Magic are still flirting with one of the worst records. Look, the young talent is really promising, but at the end of the day, it's clearly not enough. So
sure,
I would go young talent. If I had to, at this moment, if I was picking 3, I think it's Amen Thompson. Get that true, like, Fultz is good. In 5 years, though, I would be shocked if Fultz is better than Amen Thompson. So for me, it's like that's something you got to do. And Fultz is probably the best point guard on the team right now, in terms of like point guard skills, at least.
Absolutely, yeah.
And look, that's a big upgrade. So for me, that's probably who I would go. But him or Cam Whitmore, I think, are my leading choices.
Cam Whitmore. Let's talk a little bit more about him. Why does he rank so high on your draft board for the Magic in that like first pick?
Yeah, it's really just because of the size, skill, and everything he fulfills for the Magic. So with him, he's 6'7", pretty good size for a wing. I think he has long arms. He's only played a couple games, so I'm not even going to like read out the stats or anything, but he shoots very well over closeouts. It's only been 3 games, so like the sample size is small, but it looks like nothing changes on his form. He doesn't get phased by hard closeouts, anything like that. And that's really intriguing. Also on defense, he can guard 1 through 4, I would say. And then on top of that, like he is predictable at the moment as a slasher, but he can still shoot off the dribble. He can get to the rim. Just needs to refine some of that element of unpredictability, and he'll be really good. But I think that's just a complete wing. You look at some of the players, the wings at his size who are two-way, like fully two-way, like not just 3 and D, but they can be 3-level scorers or close to it and defend at a high level. Like those are all stars.
Well, and at 6'7", that's like such an intriguing size too, because like when you have Franz, who we've played plenty at the 2 this year, but in my opinion, I'd like them to shift a little bit more towards the wing, but like you could really do so much switchability there and not have to worry about, having someone too small switching onto someone, because 6'7", I mean, that's a pretty tall wing in my opinion. You're not worried too much at 6'7" with switches and whatnot. So it kind of really fills into the Magic's philosophy of like truly positionless basketball, where you're not worried too much about size. And I think that's really clear this season with how the Magic are going about things offensively.
Yeah, I mean, the size is always going to play a role. I mean, we knew this since Hammond came in, and I mean, he was the guy who drafted Giannis. Was always intrigued by length. He got Thon Maker, even though it was a terrible pick. The message is still the same.
Sure.
So I think they're not gonna take. Outside of Cole Anthony, have they taken a short player for their position? I wouldn't consider Suggs at 6'4" being short. Like that's average, I would say.
No,
on the shorter end of average, but
Cole is fine. I mean, even Wes Iwundu was lanky.
Yep.
I mean, they've always got. I think Cole is the biggest outlier there.
Yeah. So
Chuma's got length to him. Cole is definitely the biggest outlier there. But I mean, offensively, he's got that skill package that can kind of like outweigh some of his length issues. What's someone else? Give me one more prospect for that like Magic pick if it lands in the 3 to 5 range.
This is a bold one.
Let's go.
So
I love bold picks. Yes.
But if I'll give you the formula as to why I think this player is going to be one of the biggest risers come draft time. So I'll give the name at the end. But so this player is 17 years old, currently reclassified at the very end of the summer into the class. He's 6'10", handles the ball, plays defense, is on a bad team, so he's able to be a one-man show. He pretty much does everything on both ends of the floor, and he looks actually pretty good at everything he's done so far. The shot is clean. He can handle the ball. He has a really sick hezzy. He's athletic. He can hang in the air, and he's like 6'9", 6'10". So if all that, I mean, that just screams he is going to rise, and he's going to kill open workouts, and that's G.G. Jackson out of South Carolina. I really like him. I think just the raw skills are so strong. He should be in high school right now. I mean, he turns 18, I think, actually, like tomorrow as we're recording this. But he's still really impressive, and I'm just blown away with how strong of a performance he's been putting up almost every night.
That's fun. That's fun to see someone like, I love hearing of the people in the draft class who could be risers and like sneaking up and up and up. And that sounds like someone who is a perfect candidate for that. Today he's talked about in the late first, maybe in another month he's mid, and then maybe by the off season he's, up there in the top 10, potentially even top 6 range, like you're suggesting here. Sorry, as you're saying names, I'm scrolling over to them. 6'9". What's his like ideal position for them for like the NBA, you think?
Anything. It's weird. He could be, some people see him as a power forward. I really don't, because when I think of power forwards, I think of guys that could also slide over to small ball 5. I don't think that's it. I'd call him a true small forward or just a forward, right?
Sure.
Like he can do it's kind of like how Franz is a small forward. Would you really consider him a power forward though? Like they have similar-ish skill sets.
Right.
Obviously Franz is way more refined, but I would say probably as a small forward who can be a Swiss Army knife and play any role.
We definitely, in my opinion, need more small forwards on this team. Let's say Isaac comes back healthy. The risk injury kind of goes away in a season or two and he's part of this team, for the next 4 or 5 years. Like that kind of shores up some of the depth at, your big and forward position, your power forward position. But when you think about the small forward position, it's kind of like Franz, and then it's who, it's like guys
Maybe
were
Paolo?
shit.
Like, but even then I don't really.
Yeah. And then it's like, I think Paolo can play small forward, but I don't know if that's where you ideally want him. You can throw him there in certain situations for sure. But even if you just think about second unit guys, it's like you throw Terrence Ross there, but he's not on this team much longer. So there's really no reason to even talk like he's a part of the future. As far as young prospects, Jalen Suggs could switch and guard small forwards, but he is small to play that wing position there a little bit, at 6'4". So having a player that can hit that, that small forward position with some size is pretty ideal. Let's move on a little bit further. We have potentially 2 picks if they decide to use this pick. Before we get into the prospects, though, specifically, I want to talk more about that range in the draft class. So we're talking Bulls pick. The Bulls pick could be anywhere from 7 to 11, in my opinion, right? The Bulls have some issues. There's a world they figure some stuff out and start getting some wins, and that pick gets a little bit higher into the first round. I don't expect them to really make the playoffs. Maybe the play-in, so maybe it hits closer to 12 or 11 or something like that. But kind of that, 7, 8 to 11, 12 range, that part of the class, I'm sure it's talented. I'm sure, with the Magic team as young and bad as we are, that is showing some promise. Grabbing young talent on rookie contracts is always a positive thing. But what type of deal would have to show up in the NBA for you to consider not even using that pick and including it in a trade for something else? And I know that's a loaded question, and maybe you can't answer that because it's who knows who's going to become available. But I guess in terms of the talent in that range, how married to that pick are you if you're a Magic scout or a GM?
The Magic are in a weird situation, right? I would count 8 guys probably included in the very borderline core at the minimum.
Yeah, that's fair.
Of this roster. So why do you need to keep adding more? At some point, it's too much. You have to consolidate. I feel like we've talked about this before, on a Twitter space. The Magic are in a very near position where they have to consolidate their young talent, where at the end of the day, no team goes into a rebuild. It's not 2K where you can just say, hey, I drafted from 3 different drafts. I had 7 players or something, and then 2 trades, and then you keep everybody. It's just not how real life works. For the Magic, I think what they got to do is, like you said, they got to find somebody who's available. We don't know who it is. I would say ideally this is such a unicorn scenario, and
Sure.
I totally understand why this is unrealistic, but hear me out. The Magic have one of the best trade packages in the league. I'd say outside of Oklahoma City and New Orleans, the Magic have unbeatable trade packages. And if somebody were to come available that's under 30, probably ideally 28, 27, that you get for most of their prime and you can just unload the farm for, that'd be nice. Brad Beal would be really cool, but I think he's already 30. I'm a little bit picky, and he's injury prone.
Yeah.
Do you really want to you want somebody who's proven a little bit more to be not that? I wouldn't go for somebody you want somebody who could potentially be the franchise changer. And I think a few of those guys are going to pop up. You're not going to see I don't think they should go for DeAndre Ayton or something. Now, If they could do just like a pick in like Wendell Carter or something, I might even do it. But I don't know if I really think in 2 years that Wendell Carter will be worse than DeAndre Ayton. Like,
Sure.
I think that's going to be close. So maybe not. Like, they're in a tough situation regardless. Whoever it is, it's something where it's like too appealing, where it's a young enough piece to build around for 5+ more years with the current core without sacrificing a ton. If that makes sense. It's a unicorn scenario.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. They do have to make a consolidation trade. I feel like I'm hopeful that that opportunity presents itself before going into next season, right? Sometime between now and the end of the off season. That's just me personally. I like to speed things up a hair compared to let's just be as slow as possible. I don't want to make rush decisions, but I also I was really frustrated the Magic were not in the Donovan Mitchell conversation. I know that felt maybe a little hair early, but at the same point, he's that type of player that could really alter the trajectory of this team, on a really quick level, like he is doing for, the Cleveland Cavaliers. So we'll see who comes available. I'm definitely not as married to the Bulls pick as some other people. I don't think we have to use it. Obviously, it all depends on who is available and what is available. Even if it's not like an all-star and it's like a really excellent veteran at, like you said, that 27, 28 range, that we could consolidate a player or two and a pick for, that would just really controllable contract, just be a part of this veteran, this team in a veteran leadership and to provide some stability. I would be open to that. Again, it's got to be the right player, right contract, lots of things. I'm not trading this pick for, someone that's going to be on a contract year expiring, in a player option or something like that. It's got to have a couple years in the contract. But it's interesting. So, okay, let's get into this draft section a little bit. So let's say we do have the Bulls pick and it lands at 8 or 9. Who are some prospects that you like for the Magic? Let's hit 2 or 3 of them for this team this year.
Yeah, I think at that point you might want to consider the upside of Dariq Whitehead out of Duke. Again, he started slow, but for the most part, I think he's been improving. He's still averaging. It's actually been really ugly, but he's still able to get to his spots. He's had some good games. His last game against, granted, it was Maryland Eastern Shore. He had 15 points, 2 assists, 2 steals, 2 rebounds. In the game before that against Iowa, he had 8 points on 3 of 7 shooting, 6 rebounds as well, and 3 assists. So he's been active. He just hasn't been exploding quite like you would have expected. So he's somebody who I would start with. After that, there's another intriguing one. It kind of fits the mold that we talked about of the big guard, and that's Anthony Black. He's actually from Dallas. I've seen him before in high school. I still think he's a bit raw, but his shot is falling right now, and it's making a world of a difference. He's kind of a shooting guard more than a point guard, but he's 6'7", can handle the ball, and can shoot. It's an intriguing combo.
Tell me about Grady Dick. He is a name that I have heard float around recently. Even a couple of links have been sent in some group chats of mine. I've had an intense week at work, so I actually haven't been able to click and watch any of them. But he's a player that, I haven't seen anything. I'm looking at some stats on Tankathon right now. 6'7", just around 200 pounds, 19-year-old freshman. From what it sounds like, people are starting to get hyped on him. Is this someone you have your eyes on that you were impressed with that might be a fit for the Magic? Or is he not on your radar right now, not interested in him as a player? What is up with Grady Dick?
Yeah, I like him. I don't know what his draft stock is because I think he's a little bit more than a shooter, but he's an interesting study because I think for the last few years, I'd say really 3, I'm not going to count Aaron Nesmith, even though it kind of is illogical in this regard. But for the last 3 years, the best shooter in the class has been an upperclassman. We had Ochai Agbaji, Corey Kispert, and Desmond Bane 3 years in a row, all seniors. So those guys all went lottery. Or I think Corey Kispert might have gone 15th. But regardless, it was very close. It was in that top 15.
Even had Cam Johnson a couple of years ago as well, right?
Exactly. The top shooter in the class is going to go high. it also hasn't been in at least 4 years. I don't remember who it was in 2018 off the top of my head, but they haven't been a freshman. It's been an older player every time. It makes the stock very interesting. I do think Grady Dick does a little bit more than just shoot the lights out of the ball, which he does an incredible job of. 6 attempts a game at this moment. Now the stats will change a lot from now till then, but 47%, 77% from the line. I expect the free throw percentage to only go up. He can shoot off movement. He can shoot from deep. He can shoot up, spotting up, like any motion you want, he can do it. He can cut. He can seed the floor well. He's very limited, but also not flawed in some other areas outside of shooting. And it's a very good blend where I think it works enough for NBA teams. So he's somebody who I almost threw out there. And then as I was talking through it, I originally was like, nah, it's not. But now as I'm saying it, I think he really could be in the mix for the 10th pick.
It's interesting that you brought up being able to play off movement. And that's something I'm really valuing that I want to add to this team. I want to add a player that can be a little bit low usage, play really well off screens, be pretty active off ball. You see it a little bit with Gary Harris with how active he is off ball, but like we could even go back to Duncan Robinson or JJ Redick. Obviously Steph Curry is the ultimate comp, but that's unreal to expect, but just like that type of archetype that is just constantly moving off ball. Even Terrence Ross, can catch off movement really well. Is there a player like that we should keep our eyes on? It sounds like Grady Dick has a little bit of that in his game. What other players have that type of off-ball movement offensively for that we could maybe consider?
Man, on the wings right now, it's a little bit limited.
Sure.
I think if you're looking for draftable players, yeah, it's limited. The only player who comes to mind is not quite movement, but he can set his feet very quickly off of curls and things like that. If you count that as movement, he's not going to hit the catch it and run and move it one way or the other. But this is somebody who he's 6'11", 7 foot and can do this. Might be an intriguing fit with the roster is Kyle Filipowski. Now, I don't think he goes in the lottery, but if he were to trade back, I think his shot is real. I don't know if you remember who Matthew Hurt was at Duke.
No, sir.
He was the ACC's most improved player. He was this 6'9", 6'10" shooter. He could not do anything athletically, though, and was just very stiff, couldn't defend, couldn't do a thing other than shoot, could kind of dunk in transition. But other than that, he couldn't do much. Filipowski does way more. He's a more complete version on offense, and he's not a massive black hole on defense. And because of that, I think he's going to go in the first round, could go around 20, just being a 6'11", 7 foot shooter. And his shot is money. It is one of the cleanest shots. It might be the very best looking shot in the draft. Somebody like him could be an alternative.
With question marks around J.I.'s health long-term, with Bamba likely on his way out the door, not sure what's going to be up with Moritz Wagner, which I imagine he'd be back. His brother's here, but who knows? Maybe he gets opportunity for a bigger role elsewhere. There could be opportunity for some depth improvement for a younger player to come in and kind of hit that backup center power forward role a little bit. Kyle's the man. Maybe he's the man we draft with that second pick or trade back for and fill up some of that spot. You brought up trading back. That was one of the last things I want to hit before we wrap up this podcast. With this draft class being a little bit disappointing so far in certain ways. In that, would you consider, are there guys in that 12, 13, 14, later lottery, even end of the teens range that the Magic could consider trading back for, gaining another asset while also still getting the type of player that they want in that later part? Or would you just do the smart thing, or I don't know if it's a smart thing, but do the thing, take the player at 8 or 9 and be happy? Yeah.
So this player, I don't know what his stock is going to be, because it could be like Jalen Williams last year from Santa Clara, where he kind of rose at the very end out of nowhere.
Sure.
And he plays in the same conference. This is Maxwell Lewis out of Pepperdine. He's a sophomore, averages 19 points a game, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, over a block a game. He's 6'7". He's a 3-level scorer. He can play defense. I'm probably speaking about a top 10 pick that I just don't know he's going to go top 10 yet. And if he stays this secret, that people really don't know about. Like he might be there at the end of the lottery. You could trade back from if the Bulls pick is that low or high, I guess, if you want to call it that way. I doubt he'll be there around 20, but if there's somebody who you're like, hey, this might be a reach because he plays at Pepperdine, we really don't know. Sometimes they can be iffy in those smaller schools, but I think he's legit given his size and skill combo on both ends. I think he's the guy. Like I've forgotten about him since we've been talking. I was looking through my big board and I'm like, dang, how did I forget about Maxwell Lewis? He's been absolutely rising. You won't see him on a ton of major boards just yet, but I'd say give it 3 weeks. You'll see him everywhere. That's
interesting. Richard, I want to appreciate you, or I want to take a moment to appreciate you and thank you for coming on the show. I'm going to wrap it up here. We're recording this in the middle of the day on a Friday and my work day. I'm sure you have work to do as well before you head out for your trip later today. This draft class is interesting. The Magic have a lot of leverage with having 2 picks. They can do a lot of things with it. They can stay in and draft 2 potentially high lottery picks. They could trade out of it. They could trade back. They could potentially combo and move up. There's a lot of possibilities. The Magic have a lot of leverage right now. And I'm really looking forward to not only seeing what happens on draft day and lottery day, but also just continuing the conversations with other draft people like yourself, which I'm sure you'll come back on the show at some point later on in the season and as we get closer to the draft in the off season, but as well as, other draft people that we will talk about and, hopefully some articles that we'll put out or pair with other people. But just long story less long, I want to thank you. This draft class is exciting for the Magic. Where can people find your work? I'm sure if they're listening to this, they should already know, but if they don't, where can they find your work? Where are you within your draft draft scouting, and what can they expect going forward for the rest of the season from you? Yeah, for the moment, who knows what's going to happen by the time this is released, but for the moment, I'm on Twitter with on the handle @MavsDraft. That's where I still do most of my work, but I've started moving to Instagram because you're not limited by characters, and sure. It's a little bit more interactive, I feel like. So I'm a different handle there. I'm @NBA Draft Film. So trying to grow over there, but and then for what's coming up, I mean, I'm releasing my first big board around New Year's Eve. It's tough because my last big boards, I think most big boards in general aren't accurate in December because conference play shapes the draft. Like conference play in the NCAA tournament really shaped the draft more than people realize. More scouts are there, more hands-on experiences and seeing real matchups and things like that. So doing it ahead of it, it's kind of a guessing game, but I'll probably put out a top 45 or something. And a lot of mock drafts will be coming, closer to draft time. So that's what you can look forward to on MavsDraft.com. I feel like I have to have at least one opportunity in your multiple mock drafts just because of the success I had last year. So if you want a mediocre draft person, I feel like I'm your guy. I'll be happy to represent the Magic. If you come and need one, just holler at me. Who knows? Maybe I'll get lucky again. Dude, I mean, you and Malik have single-handedly drafted the Magic the last 2 years. He got Franz and Suggs at the exact picks. He did. And then you got Paolo at 1. I will mock in my real mock. I will tell the world who you guys pick. And that's what's happening. I forget I don't remember who I picked for the second rounder on that draft, but I know it wasn't not Caleb Houston. But yeah, maybe Malik and I will crush this mock round this coming season as well. I'm looking forward to it. I'm just at the start of my draft preparation. I feel a lot more informed already. You've given me some great names to already go out and check out more tape on. I'm looking forward to seeing your site continue to fill up with more draft content for this draft class. And Richard, thanks again. Magic fans, appreciate you tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this Christmas special, holiday special, whatever holiday you enjoy. Spend time with your families, have fun. Let's go Magic. Peace.